This book is, and pardon my French, fantastique. GameMasters here, and this is our first look inside Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel. There are two covers, the standard with artwork by Evan Fong, and this silky collector's cover with artwork by Sijia Hong. Now, you guys know by now that when I dive into a new book, I gotta check out the disclaimer first. This one reads, "There is no guarantee that the light of the Radiant Citadel will be visible to the naked eye on your plane of existence, but know that it is there, whether seen or not." And of course we have the table of contents, and I want to point out a few things. The book itself is right at 224 pages, with the first chapter going into what the Radiant Citadel actually is. We covered this first chapter fairly extensively in a recent video, but the remaining chapters are all adventures. Chapter 1 explains what the Radiant Citadel is. It's a sprawling city that has been built upon a fossil of a long-forgotten creature that wrapped itself around a massive diamond called the Auroral Diamond. And that's floating out in the heart of the ethereal plane. The Radiant Citadel, it's a hub of sorts that can connect the players to the 13 different adventures that make up the remainder of this book. And I'm going to be as careful as I can to not give out any spoilers. But again, you guys know me, I'm likely to spill one or four. As mentioned, the Citadel is a springboard that the players can use to launch into the adventures contained within this book. They can return to the Citadel at the end of each adventure, or really at any point, I suppose, provided that the opportunity is there. Back in the 1980s, we had modules, adventures. We could go into a store, grab one that sounded cool, and run it with little need of anything extra. The adventures in this book are all standalone, more or less. I mean, yes, the Radiant Citadel is a connection point, but other than that, each adventure is pretty much its own self-contained adventure, and reminds me a lot of those older modules. I want to point something else out here too. There have been a few vocal people kind of crying that they felt Wizards of the Coast was being too safe with this book, that they had heard it wasn't going to contain any fighting, conflict, or anything that is really considered to be the core of what Dungeons & Dragons is. They felt that it wasn't being represented right. D&D. Listen, that could not be further from the truth. Without spoiling the adventures themselves, I will tell you that, well, okay, here's a spoiler, and I knew I wouldn't be able to resist. Look at this artwork. We see the description says, two ghouls drag a fresh victim into the depths of the Hollow Mind. In this adventure, The Fiend of Hollow Mind, the players have been tasked with investigating a magical curse or disease that is slowly killing anyone that runs across it. Now, this is not an adventure that is full of uplifting interaction. If the players are not careful, they're simply going to run the risk of encountering a demon lord. Real quick, I've got to ask, if you're enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up. It helps recommend it to others, and I thank you kindly for that. Another adventure, this one's called Written in Blood. Yes, this particular adventure starts off at a happy hour festival with everyone enjoying great food and drink, singing and playing music in the street, but it swiftly turns into a bloodbath as 4 cultists begin slaughtering the would-be festival goers. It's up to the party members to dispatch them and figure out what happened. Another example, the adventure called Wages of Vice reads, when they stumble upon a murder. Yeah, there's a parade, there's loot, there's adventure, but this is very much an adventure that can easily be found in any ongoing campaign. And there are adventures in here that are much less bloody and horrific, and while none are on the level of like Tomb of Horrors, there are demons, there are monsters, there is conflict, and lots of fighting. One of the more sinister monsters in here is called the Whistler. This thing is pure nightmare fuel. They appear as blurred form, kind of reminds me a bit of the invisibility shield that a predator might have, but are a little more solid. They are gray and are shaped a bit like a cross between Slender Man and kind of a gray alien. And this is the creepy part. The person that wrote this adventure, Terry Romero, created this Whistler with such a precise description. I'll read you this little snippet. Those stalked by a Whistler can't shut out its soundless 7-note tune, an otherworldly melody that invades and scourges the mind. Terry had to have a specific tune in mind. That description of being 7 notes is just too specific. And to Terry Romero, if you're watching this or if this video gets to you, please share that tune with me. If a player is caught up with hearing this tune, they must make a wisdom save, else they're going to take 6d10 psychic damage. Now, you still want to tell me that this setting is safe? The other adventures in this book are really well written. Some can be run through fairly quickly, others might take multiple sessions, and while each adventure itself is self-contained, it's not a do the first adventure first, then move to the second, then move to the third. Although you could certainly do that if you wish. Likewise, if you have a party of 8th level characters, you could easily just jump directly into the adventure Trail of Destruction. A few months back, I did a deep dive look at the Aurumvorax, a monster that appeared back in the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons era, as we had heard a rumor that it was going to be included in this book, but with 5th edition stats. In Gold for Fools and Princes, the monster of choice is, yep, the Aurumvorax. I'll link at the end of this video to the AD&D version so you can compare, but the Aurumvorax has a badger-like appearance. They have a hide of gold. They have a natural armor class of 15, 8d6 plus 8 hit points. And while I'm not going to dive too deep into their stat block here, they can bite and claw with their bite attack having +4 to hit and can cause 1d8 plus 2 damage. Further, if the target is wearing any kind of armor, the Aurumvorax gains 1d6 plus 1 hit points. Their claw attack has +5 to hit and can cause 1d6 plus 2 slashing damage. There are other elements to this Aurumvorax as well as an Aurumvorax Den Leader with even more powerful stats, but I don't want to spoil it too much, so I'll do a deeper dive of these two guys in a future video. There are 13 total adventures, but there are some bonus adventures as well. The final chapter, Beyond the Radiant Citadel, details out 8 possible additional adventures that the players could embark upon as well. Another neat element at the end of each adventure. Okay, so each adventure, as mentioned, springboards out from the Radiant Citadel going to a specific culture's home plane. If a player so chooses to be from that plane, there is a small section at the end of each chapter that details some questions that that player can ask to help immerse themselves into that plane's culture. The only critique I have about this is that if I'm running the adventure, I really don't want my players to read it. But how will they know if they want to create a character from that culture and that area unless they read the adventure first? Now that might be some homework for the DM here to provide some details up front about each area as the players explore the Radiant Citadel. Is every player out there going to enjoy the adventure set up in this book? Now I can say that there is certainly something in here pretty much for everyone. Is everything in here for everyone? No, no book has that. But this one most certainly does not disappoint. There are certainly some adventures in here that I'll need to chew on as to how to run them competently, but there are some that I cannot wait to toss my players into, and I know that they're just going to have fun. Sorry, flies. I must be in an episode of Westworld. As mentioned at the top of this video, I have previously checked out Chapter 1 and we went into depth with it. And I previously did a video where we looked back at the Aurumvorax from old school Advanced Dungeons & Dragons that we referenced earlier as well. And if you'd like to check out Chapter 1 in depth, or if you'd like to see the historical stats of the Aurumvorax, check out these videos. What's the biggest element in this book that you are most wanting to know about? More about the Radiant Citadel itself? More about a specific adventure? The monsters? The treasure? Let me know in the comments below, and until next our paths cross, may you not get a 7-note tune stuck in your head.